Hi there and welcome to Tech Life, a channel where I aim to review everything from selfie sticks to laptops to IDs for coding, video editing, software for producing thumbnails, essentially anything tech related. If you are new to the channel, please consider subscribing. If you have anything that you think I should review, please let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to review that product. In this video, we're going to be looking at functions in JavaScript. We use functions for a number of different reasons in programming. Some of those reasons are firstly to make code reusable, so we can write a single function that we can reuse by calling it from anywhere in our code as many times as we like. Also, we use functions in order to improve the organization of our code by breaking down complex problems into smaller, more manageable chunks. And also functions are used to enhance maintainability of our code by centralizing that code. So using functions means that if we need to make a code change, we'd only have to make the code change in that one function as opposed to having to make changes in lots of different places within the code if we didn't use a function. In order to create a function in JavaScript, we use the keyword function. This keyword is then followed by the name of the function. So all functions have a name, and then that name will be followed by a pair of parentheses. And then finally, we'll have a couple of curly braces, and then the code for the function is contained within those curly braces. Let's fire up Visual Studio Code and create our very first JavaScript function. We are going to create a really simple function, and all it's going to do is output something to the console.log. So this is Visual Studio, and for those of you who have been following along with this JavaScript series, you will be familiar with these two files. We've got a HTML file, and this file makes a call out to the .js file, and any code that's contained within this .js file will be executed. We've been placing obviously the JavaScript code within here, and we're going to continue to do that in this part. And we're going to use the keyword function in order to create our first function, and all functions have a name, so we're going to name this function top speed, and the name of the function will be followed with opening and closing parentheses and then a couple of curly braces, and the rest of our code for this function will be entered in between these two braces. As I say, it's going to be nice and simple, so it's going to be console.log, open parentheses, open inverted commas, the top speed of our 350 GT is 158, and then this line is going to be terminated with a semicolon. So that is our first function. It won't do anything though, because even though we've defined and created a function, we have to call the function in order for the code within the function to be executed. So this code will only be executed once we make a call to that function. And in order to call a function, we use the name of the function. So in this case, it's going to be top speed. Open parentheses with a semicolon. Control S. Run this. In order to get to DevTools, we press F12 and we'll zoom in there. And we can see that the string, the top speed of our 350 GT is 158, has been output to the console.log. Excellent. So that's our very first JavaScript function. The next thing that we are going to look at is parameters and arguments. A parameter is a special kind of variable that we can use within a function, and a parameter refers to pieces of data that we can provide as input to a function. So a parameter is declared in the function definition, and parameters go hand in hand with arguments. Arguments are the actual values that we pass into a function. So arguments we'll pass in when we make a call to the function. And all of this will be super clear when we start writing this code. So I'm going to change this existing function slightly. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to place the name of variable within these parentheses, and this variable is known as a parameter. So I'm going to say max speed. So that is a parameter, and I'm going to change this string slightly. So I'm going to say the top speed of 350 GT is, and instead of hard coding this value of 158, I'm going to use the value that's going to be passed in by the user into this parameter, and I'm going to use that parameter over here. And in order to concatenate the string to the variable, we use the plus sign. And so that's our function change to take a parameter. So it's taking one parameter, it's called max speed. We're using the max speed variable and concatenating that to the existing string here. So whatever value is passed into this variable will be concatenated to the string. And then we come down here to the function call, and then now we have to pass in a value into this function, and the value we're going to pass in is 158 because I think the 350 GT did used to max out at 158. So this is the function name, top speed, and that is the argument. So this 158 is called an argument. So this is the value that gets passed in. Okay, control S this, F5, and now we get this as the output. The top speed of our 350 GT is 158. Let me just quickly change this just to prove a point. Let's just say it's 160. Control S, F5, 160. Excellent. So that is the parameter. The parameter is defined in the function definition, and this value, this 160, that is the argument, and the arguments are passed in during the function call. So we're not limited to having just functions with one parameters. We can have 0 or more parameters, and so we are going to change this function to contain another parameter, and in order to separate the parameters we use a comma. So we've got max speed there, and in fact I'm going to place a parameter before this, and I'm going to call it my Lambo, and then a comma. So now we have two parameters. We've got the first parameter called my Lambo, and we've got the second parameter called max speed. And I'm going to change this string slightly. I'm going to say the top speed of a Lamborghini is the top speed of a Lamborghini is, let's get rid of this, leave a space. The top speed of a Lamborghini is, no, I'm not going to say is. The top speed of a Lamborghini, I'm going to place the name of the Lamborghini here, so I'm going to use my Lambo. I'm going to concatenate that to the word is, and then I'm going to concatenate that to the max speed parameter. Just to recap on what we've done, now we have two parameters. The first one is my Lambo, and the second one is max speed. We've changed this string to say the top speed of a Lamborghini, and then I'll place the Lamborghini name here, and that name will be taken from the parameter, and that value will be taken from the argument that we're going to pass in here shortly. So the Lamborghini name will be placed here, and then the max speed will also be a value that is passed into this parameter, max speed, and that will be passed in as an argument in this function call. So I am going to say the max speed of a 350 GT, and then I'm going to say 158. So two things to note here. I'm passing in a string here, so that string will be placed in this variable my Lambo, this parameter, and I'm passing in a number here. 158 is a number, and that value will be placed within this parameter here, and then once those values are within those parameters, we can go ahead and use those as we would any other variable by inserting those into our string in these two places. Okay, let's see if this works. Control S to save that. F5 to refresh this. The top speed of a Lamborghini 350 GT is 158. So we can use any valid variable type as a parameter in JavaScript. And unlike many other languages, JavaScript will not complain if you pass in less arguments than those defined for the function. So we've defined two parameters, and we did pass in two arguments, but JavaScript is not going to throw an error if we only pass in one argument. So I'm just going to pass in a value for my Lambo, which is a string. So if we Control S that and we refresh, and so the output in this instance is the top speed of Lamborghini 350 GT is, and then instead of throwing an error, it just JavaScript just says it's undefined, so it doesn't know what the value of that second parameter is, so it just classifies it as undefined. We can do the opposite of that. We can pass in more values than the function is expecting. So if I put in the value for max speed again, which is 158, and then if I pass in another extra argument to this function, and I'm going to pass in a string, we'll just say great car. Now we're passing three arguments in. The first one is a string 350 GT. Second one is a number 158, which is the top speed, and then we've got another string. We're just saying this car is great. But this function is only expecting two parameters. So again, this should not throw an error. Okay, so now it's saying the top speed of Lamborghini 350 GT is 158, and it's used the string, the first string, the 350 GT, and the number, and placed those values into my Lambo and max speed, and it's then gone ahead and just totally ignored this last argument because there's there isn't a parameter for that argument, so it's just gone ahead and ignored that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to take a look at are default parameters. Default parameters, as the name suggests, have a default value assigned to them. So if a user chooses not to pass a value in for that parameter as an argument, then the code uses the default value instead. So if I go ahead and make a slight change to this existing function, and I'm going to leave those two parameters in place. I'm going to put a third parameter here. I'm going to call it review. And in order to give this parameter a default value, we use the equal sign. And this is going to be a string, so I'm going to use inverted commas, and I'm just going to say great car, like so. And I'm going to have to make a change to this string as well. So we're saying top speed of Lamborghini plus my Lambo plus is plus top speed, or max speed, sorry. Max speed. Then I'm going to concatenate a string to this. I'm going to say, and it is a, and then I'm going to concatenate the value of review to that, like so. I think that should work. So now if I make a call to this top speed a function using 1, 2, 3 arguments, amazing car. So I'm passing in 3 arguments because this function is expecting 3 arguments to be passed in. It's got 3 parameters. So if I control S that and refresh this, it's saying the output is top speed of Lamborghini 350 GT is 158, and it is an amazing car. And that's what we placed here. So that's exactly what we were expecting. I'll leave a little space here so it looks right when we output to the console. Now, if I choose to get rid of this third parameter and just pass in, third argument, and pass in just the 2 arguments, control S that, refresh this. Now it's saying the top speed of Lamborghini 350 GT is 158, and it is a great car. And that great car value is taken from this default value that we entered when we defined the function and declared this third parameter. So that is default parameters in action. Okay, next up we're going to take a look at how we can return values from a function. So far we've passed in values to a function and we've used those values to display in the console.log. We can use the keyword return to retrieve a value from a function. Once the return keyword executes in a function, that function ends. So any code placed after the return keyword in a function will not be executed. Okay, let's create a function that returns the top speed of a Lamborghini if we pass in the name, the model of a Lamborghini. So I'm going to have to change this function around quite a bit. The first thing I'm going to do is I'll probably need a variable outside of the function. So I'm going to say let. So we use the keyword let in order to create a variable. And I'm going to name this variable my Lambo's top speed. And then we probably don't need all of these parameters. So I'm going to get rid of those. and we don't need this console.log just yet, so I'll delete that. Okay, what I do need is another variable, and this time that variable is going to sit within the function, and I'm going to call this top speed. Might as well initialize it. I'm going to initialize it to 0. And next we're going to use a switch statement, a case statement. Oops, what did I do? Okay, I do need that. So I'm going to use a switch statement. I'm going to say if my Lambo, and then I've got the case statement. So if the case is Aventador, if it's Aventador, then the top speed is going to be equal to, I think it's 218. Use the break keyword to break out of that case. I'm going to copy and paste these. I'm not going to type all of this. The next one is going to be, let's do Huracan. And I think that's 202. And this time we're going to have Gallardo. And the Gallardo top speed is 198. And maybe 2 more. I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't know how they pronounce that. That's 217. And lastly, we're going to have the 350 GT. 350 GT. And that's relatively slow. 158. Excellent. Let's tidy this up slightly. Okay, in fact, these should be strings. These are strings, so I'm going to place these in inverted commas. Oh. Come on, so those are in inverted commas. And that is the end of our case statement. So outside of our case statement or switch statement, we're going to use the keyword return, and I want to return the variable top speed. So I'll use the variable name, so any code that appears here will not be executed, because as soon as the return keyword is executed in a function, then the function ends. So if we place anything here, it's not going to get executed. Okay, that is our function. Let's just clean this up slightly. Outside of the function, we are going to use this variable up here, and we're going to say my Lambo's top speed is equal to, and then I'm going to call the function and pass in a name of a Lamborghini, and we're going to pass in the 350 GT first. Like so. So just a quick recap on what's going on here.
I'm not quite sure how to help you with that.
So just a quick recap on what we're doing here. So we've made a call to the function. We passed in a model of a Lamborghini with a 350 GT, and then we are expecting this function to return a value. That value is going to be saved in this variable, and then we're going to use that variable in our console.log, so we can display the value of the variable to the log, like so. No, that's wrong. We need the variable name. Okay, I think this should work. I don't see any errors. I'm going to Control S to save, and we are going to refresh, and we get the output 158. Excellent. The reason we get 158 is because the 350 GT could only muster up a top speed of 158. Let's try another Lamborghini. Copy that one and paste that into here. So now it's a Gallardo. Save that. Refresh this. And 198. Excellent. That is cool. We could, in fact, do away with at least one of these lines, because we could simply call the function from our console.log function. So console.log is a function, and instead of first calling our top speed function, retrieving the value, placing the value into a separate variable, and then using a console.log function and then passing in the value from this variable into console.log, we could do all of this in one go. The reason I did it on those two lines was to make it clear as to what we were doing. This is a beginner's course, so obviously I wanted to write the code as clear as possible, but we can do this. So as I say, console.log is a function, and we can call a function from we can call our top speed function from this console.log function, and we do that by using the parentheses, and then within these parentheses we can say top speed and another set of parentheses, and we can pass in Gallardo again, like that. In fact, let's pass in a different one. Let's pass in Huracan. Copy that. Paste that into there. These two lines have been commented out. So in JavaScript, as we know, these two forward slashes comment out the code. So these two lines of code will not get executed. Control S, refresh this, 202, and 202, the Huracan. Excellent. So this is a much cleaner way to do things. Everything's on one line, but from a beginner's perspective, this might be a little confusing. That's why I did it on the two lines. Okay, I think that's it for this short video. Quick recap on what we looked at. Firstly, we explained why we might create functions. We said that functions allow us to reuse our code, and they also help us to better maintain our code. We said that in order to create a function, we used a keyword function. We created a very simple function to print a value to the console. And then we looked at parameters. We said that functions can be defined with zero or more than one parameter. Parameters allow us to pass values into our functions, and those values are called arguments. Next, we looked at passing in less than the expected arguments expected for our function, and we passed in more, and we saw that JavaScript didn't throw an error. We followed that by defining default parameters, and lastly, we looked at how to return values from a function. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, please hit the like button and maybe even consider subscribing to the channel. Hope to see you in the next one. Thank you so much.